and welcome to my studio. I'm Lydia and today I'm going to be showing you how to level up your bucket hat game. I've created a pattern with a 5-panel bucket hat and it also contains a sun hat variation of the pattern. That will be linked below for you. We're going to work with organza today. You can work with any type of fabric, but I thought that the organza would just bring an element that is just so chic. Look at this. So let's get started. As I mentioned, my free PDF patterns contain 2 styles, so it has 4 different pieces. I have a tutorial for the Sunhat style lined up for next week, so make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you'll get it directly in your inbox when I release it. This hat pattern has a head circumference of 24.5 inches or 62.5 centimeters. Sounds like it's big, but my head circumference is a little over 22 inches, and I developed this pattern a lot, so I know it fits comfortably. If you download my pattern, make sure to print it as actual size or at 100% scale on A4 or US letter paper. So for this cute little bucket hat, you will only need to use piece A and B. The triangular piece is one of 5 panels that makes up the cap of the hat. You will cut 5 for your outer fabric or shell and 5 for your inner fabric or lining. The brim piece or piece B is to be cut on fold to create the entire hat brim with a seam in the back, and you will cut 2 of those. The seam allowance for this pattern is 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter everywhere. To make this hat, you want about 1/2 yard or 1/2 meter of 58-inch width fabric. I chose a black silk organza, which I wouldn't recommend if you are a beginner since it can be a bit shifty, but you could try something like cotton, linen, canvas, or even upcycle some denim. I cut with a rotary blade and mat, which is really helpful for delicate fabric like organza. You could also use scissors and pins to cut your fabric. Since organza is shifty, I made sure to pre-fold and iron the space in which I would cut the hat brim so that I was sure it was on grain. I cut 2 of those on fold. Then I used one of the cutout chunks of fabric. It fit my hat cap panel, so I cut out 2 of those. Then I folded my fabric carefully 4 times over using an iron, because if I cut these panels off grain in organza, it will be harder to sew and could end up looking wonky. So I cut around my cap panel twice, giving me 8 more pieces. So I now have a total of 10 cap pieces and 2 hat brim pieces. So let's sew this. Start by sewing 2 of the panels together on one long side. Right sides together. Organza doesn't have a right side, both sides are good, so it doesn't really matter for me. But if you have a fabric that has a good side, then make sure that those sides are facing so that when you turn it out, the seam is on the wrong side of the fabric. Then add another panel to these 2 pieces to create a 3-panel portion. Next, sew the remaining 2 panel pieces together, and then sew this 3-panel piece to your 2-panel piece in one long seam to create the full 5-panel cap. Make sure that you match up the panel seams at the top so that they intersect perfectly. Repeat this with the other 5 panel pieces to create a separate cap. It ends up looking pretty cool in this organza because you can see through it and it kind of just looks like a spider's web or something. I used my tailor's ham to iron the seams to one side. You could alternatively top stitch your seams as you sew them. I'll be doing that in my next tutorial with the Sunhat, but again, because this is organza, I like to reduce the amount of stitching because this fabric is more delicate, so I just opt for ironing it. Now you can skip this step if it seems too confusing, but it's a step that will keep your shell and lining caps together. On each separate cap, find your long seam that you did when you connected the 2 and 3 panel portions of each cap, and then match these seams together. Make sure that when you match these cap seams together that the same amount of panels are facing each other. I have 3 panels facing each other while I sew this seam. Then just sew this seam allowance together all the way around and flip it out and you'll have an inseparable cap. You could alternatively just face the caps wrong sides together and then do a little hand stitch at the top to keep them together, but really it's not absolutely necessary. Take your 2 brim pieces and with right sides together, sew up the open ends. Finger press or iron the seams open, then place each piece right sides together. So that means the smooth side of your seams will be touching. Then sew around the outer perimeter of the brim. Then you can open it up and push the seam allowance to one side to understitch it. Push it to the side that you don't want to show on the top of the hat. This is definitely an optional step, it just has a nice clean finished look to it. Make sure that when you are understitching that the seam is facing toward the side that will be facing down when you're wearing the hat. So the wrong side. So if you're doing a hat with 2 different colors and your lining is a different color, you want your seam to be facing towards the lining piece and you want to sew on that piece. I turn this out and iron the edges flat, and we are getting closer to finishing. The hat is shaping up. It's looking good, if I do say so myself. It's time to apply the brim to the cap. So to do this, place your cap with its right side down, then match the raw edges of your hat brim to the edge of the cap. When you're doing this, make sure that the right side of your hat brim is facing down as well. Match your hat brim seam to one of the cap panel seams. Then match the center of your hat brim, mine is indicated by the fold I ironed when cutting it at the start, and match this to the center of the cap panel directly opposite from the back seam. I thought this might be kind of hard to see, so I made a little diagram. Basically, I'm showing your cap with the right side down, then adding your hat brim with the seam matching a cap seam at the back, and then the center front fold of the hat brim is matched to the center of the opposite cap panel. Then just pin it all the way around and sew. Since I don't want this raw edge showing, I want to cover the seam, so I am using a piece of binding. A ribbon of about 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter thick would be even better. I just didn't have this, so I used a piece of binding. You want a length of at least 26 inches or 66 centimeters. We are essentially going to cover the raw edge of the seam you just sewed. With the brim of your hat facing up, sew your ribbon to the seam allowance just a few millimeters or 1/8 of an inch away from the original seam, all the way around. When you come back to where you begin, just fold under the raw edge of your ribbon so that it covers the other raw edge and sew it down. Then when we turn this out, you're going to push your seam allowance up toward the cap and do a nice top stitch about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters away from the seam, catching the ribbon on the back side. You could also stitch it from the inside if that's more comfortable for you. And see just how clean that looks. Give it a nice press if you like, and it is ready to wear. If you end up making a hat like this, I would absolutely love to see it. You can tag me on Instagram at LYDIA NAOMI Studio or hashtag LYDIA NAOMI, or even just DM me an image. Before I show the final result, I'd just like to invite you to join this sewing fam and subscribe. Leave a comment below. I love seeing and responding to your comments. Let me know what types of garments you want to see me make, or tell me where you're watching from. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.